Everyone thought it was just an ice cream truck. But when Tango barked, something wasn't right. What they pulled from the back left even the officers stunned. All right, here's the full breakdown, but real quick, drop your favorite canine's name in the comments and hit that subscribe button. The summer heat had already started to settle in over Hickory Falls, a quiet town nestled just off the interstate in central Virginia. By mid-June, school was out, bikes lined driveways, and the familiar chime of an ice cream truck had become part of the neighborhood rhythm. Every evening around 5, kids from Brandon Street would gather at the corner near the old water tower, clutching change in their palms, waiting for the ice cream truck to roll through. A pale blue van with faded cartoon stickers, rusted edges, and a loudspeaker that whistled out old jingles. No one thought much of it. But one day on a late Thursday afternoon, someone new came to that street. Not a parent, not a neighbor, but a canine officer named Reed Lawson and his partner, a 4-year-old Belgian Malinois named Tango. They had no intention of stopping. They were assigned to routine patrol, mostly aimed at break-in prevention and neighborhood visibility. That is, until Tango changed the plan. Reed drove slowly past Brandon Street, windows halfway down, sun flashing off the windshield. Families were on porches, lawn sprinklers danced over trimmed grass, and the ice cream truck had just rolled up to the curb with its tune still playing. Tango, usually calm during drives, shifted in the back seat. His ears perked, then stood stiff. Then came the growl. Reed glanced in the rear view. Tango's gaze was locked. Not at the kids, not at the people, but at the ice cream truck. More specifically, at the back panel near the wheel well. Tango growled again, then barked, short, firm, focused. Reed slowed. In all their patrols, Tango had never reacted like that unless there was something more, and in canine terms, that one bark was not casual. It was a signal. Reed parked across the street and stepped out casually. Tango stayed beside him, alert. The truck sat idle, engine still humming. The vendor inside, middle-aged, round-faced, wearing sunglasses, was handing out change to a young boy holding a cone. Everything appeared normal, but Tango was still fixed. He pulled toward the curb. The vendor noticed, raised a hand, and gave a small wave. Reed nodded. He moved slowly around the side of the truck, not drawing attention. The side door was open. Coolers packed with ice cream tubs sat in plain view. A faded laminated menu hung above the counter. But Tango's focus never changed. He was sniffing the rear seam, the exact same point he had zeroed in on from inside the cruiser. Then he barked again, louder this time. Reed stepped back and asked the man for ID and vendor license. The man complied without hesitation, handing over laminated credentials. But something was off. The name on the license read Donald Hughes, but the driver's license said Ronald Hughes. Reed asked about the mix-up. The man laughed, said it was just a typo. Reed nodded, said nothing, and radioed dispatch to verify both. Tango sat down beside the truck. That was his confirmation posture, the final stage after an alert. Reed had seen him do it dozens of times, narcotics, contraband, even buried weapons. He was never wrong. And now he was saying the back of that ice cream truck wasn't just suspicious, it was hiding something. Within minutes, a second unit arrived. Officer Melissa Grant stepped out, already briefed by radio. Reed requested a search based on K9 alert. The vendor hesitated. His mood changed. He protested, but Reed stayed calm. Another call was made to the local division's mobile forensics team. By the time the team arrived, Tango was pacing again. Not agitated, restless, like time was running out. The mobile unit began dismantling the rear panel of the truck with special tools. It wasn't factory sealed. It had been modified. Inside, behind layers of insulation and sheet metal, was a narrow compartment just wide enough to hold a small crate, and inside the crate was a bag. The entire atmosphere shifted. The street had been cleared. Parents pulled their children back behind porch steps. Officers created a perimeter. The crate was removed, sealed, and opened in a controlled area. Inside the duffel bag, dozens of burner phones, prepaid SIM cards, an external hard drive, Small envelopes marked with student names and school districts. There were no weapons, no drugs, nothing immediately explosive, but what they had found was worse in another way. Digital access kits used for intercepting school Wi-Fi systems, duplicating ID badge data, and accessing digital attendance logs remotely. It wasn't for selling ice cream, it was for watching. The man in the truck, whoever he really was, refused to answer questions. His fingerprints came back clean. His ID was fake. His vendor license had been pulled from a real expired application 2 years prior. The truck was registered under a company name that no longer existed. It had passed through 3 states in 5 weeks. Each time it had parked near schools, near parks, near neighborhoods like Brandon Street. Each time it had looked harmless, until Tango barked. When investigators ran the names found in the envelopes, the connection hit fast. Some of the names matched with students who had reported seeing the same man offering free treats or discounts. Most adults dismissed it as innocent, but the hard drive changed that. Encrypted files revealed internal school system data, IDs, parent contact logs, student pickup schedules. It wasn't the kids themselves being targeted. It was the infrastructure around them, the timing, the patterns, the access points. Reed sat that night on the back step of the precinct, Tango lying beside him, panting softly, eyes always half watching the door. There were no flashing lights, no press releases. The operation had been quiet, precise. But Reed knew the bark had come at the right second, before the truck left, before that data moved, before someone used it for something that would not have been reversible. Tango had sensed something layered beneath the rusted paint, beyond the jingles, and under the cold tubs of soft serve. And now the town was safe, but it could have ended so differently. The ice cream truck had been impounded under federal custody within 24 hours. What sat behind that rear panel wasn't just evidence, it was the blueprint of something larger, something spreading across quiet neighborhoods without raising a single alarm until one canine dog made noise no one could ignore. The truck's hard drive was handed off to a digital forensics team in Richmond. The encryption was dense, multi-layered, disguised beneath folders labeled as music files and old receipts. But one thing became clear immediately. This truck had been used before, and Brandon Street wasn't the first stop. Inside the hard drive, GPS logs revealed 7 prior parking locations across 3 states. Each one matched school zones, public libraries, or family parks. Areas with open Wi-Fi, routine foot traffic, and minimal camera surveillance. No recorded incidents, no filed complaints, just a van with faded stickers, tinny speakers, and a vendor offering discounts at the exact hours schools let out. But the encrypted logs went deeper. One folder titled Echo Points contained system access data, spoof staff IDs, firewall bypass scripts, and even screenshots of school security panels accessed remotely. Someone was using the disguise of ice cream delivery to digitally map educational institutions from the inside out, and no one noticed until Tango did. As the investigation widened, one particular site on the GPS map stood out. A middle school just outside Roanoke. Surveillance footage was reviewed, and there it was, the same ice cream truck, same logo, same man, parked at the staff lot's edge. That day, students had been dismissed early for a scheduled half-day. 3 days later, the school reported a breach in their internal records system. Nothing stolen, just odd activity. Unknown to them at the time, a digital skimmer had been left inside the staff lounge built to intercept access badge data when swiped for the soda fridge. It stayed there for 2 days, then vanished. That was weeks before the truck appeared on Brandon Street. They had been building a net. Each stop, a test. Each time, invisible, until a dog ripped open the pattern. Back at the impound lot, the van was further dismantled. Every panel, every vent, every false ceiling was examined. Behind the front seats, officers found a second magnetic logo rolled under the floor mat. Sundrop Water Delivery. It wasn't used that day, but it was ready. A change of identity for the next town. The speakers could play music or announcements. A side banner was folded beneath the bench seat reading "Back to School Specials District Approved." This wasn't just a disguise, It was a traveling access system built to blend in anywhere a van could roll and a clipboard could pass inspection. And beneath it all, Tango had smelled what no one could see. In a hidden compartment behind the truck's electrical box, officers found a burn bag, a heavy canvas pouch used to dispose of evidence quickly. Inside it were partially shredded documents, plastic tags, and fragments of blank student ID cards. But one scrap had survived the shred. It showed a barcode, half a name, and the last part of a printed label. Lease do not scan, temporary access for site lead only. Site lead, meaning there were others. This man in the ice cream truck, he wasn't the architect. He was a part of something larger, and someone had sent him there. The vendor, still refusing to give a real name, remained in federal holding. His alias had been burned, his prints scratched. He had no medical records, no employment history, no tax filings. He had been made clean, but his phone, pulled from beneath the van's radio, wasn't. The prepaid burner had only 2 contacts. Both numbers bounced through VPN reroutes across multiple states. But one number had a last known location ping, Wilmington, North Carolina, and the username tied to the number, Echo Drop Lid. It matched the label on the shredded document and confirmed what Tango had exposed. There were others, and the van was just one piece. At Brandon Street Elementary, school resumed 2 days after the incident. Quietly, no press was allowed near the playground, no interviews were given, but within the school office, changes were already being made. All vendor check-ins were rerouted through a double verification system. Staff were trained to spot inconsistencies in vehicle credentials. New fencing was added near the rear field. But what the teachers remembered most, what stayed in their minds, was the bark. The sharp sound that cracked through the calm, that moment where a dog did something no adult, no camera, no security badge could do. He stopped it, not by force, but by instinct. Officer Reed Holloway sat at his desk late that Friday night, running through the details again. Every step of the day, every glance from Tango. He remembered thinking it would be a normal patrol. He remembered the way Tango leaned into the back window, nostrils flaring. It wasn't fear, it wasn't aggression, it was urgency. Like he had smelled something wrong, not chemical, not mechanical, but off. Tainted, something out of place in the rhythm of the neighborhood. And when he barked, Reed listened. That bark had started the unraveling. 3 days after the arrest, Reed received a phone call from a blocked number. It was a woman's voice. She did not give her name, but she said her daughter had been one of the children whose name was in the envelope found inside the truck. She just wanted to say thank you, not to him, but to the dog, to the one who saw what no one else did. Her voice broke when she said it, and then the line went silent. Federal agents expanded the investigation. They began reviewing all school and vendor interactions across multiple regions. Old surveillance was pulled. Badge logs were rescanned. In one district, a janitorial cart was found to have been swapped with a duplicate. In another, a breakroom printer contained a hidden wireless module not issued by IT. Every time they followed a lead, it pulled back to the same structure, quiet, calculated, invisible, built to blend in until Tango barked. That weekend, Reed took Tango out of uniform and drove him past the Brandon Street block. No one noticed them. They passed the playground, the corner where the truck had parked, the tree where Tango had first pulled on the leash. Reed slowed. Tango sat up in the back seat. His ears flicked forward. He stared at the curb for a long moment, then lay back down, calm now. Whatever had happened there, he had closed it. But Reed knew it wasn't the end, only the part that finally came to light. The deeper agents went into the digital logs recovered from the ice cream truck. The more disturbing the picture became. Each folder, each encrypted file, each tiny bit of metadata pointed to something far more methodical than just identity theft or passive surveillance. It pointed to targeting kids, not physically, but through systems, through access points, through invisible digital trails. They weren't stealing children, they were mapping them, and it all started with an ice cream jingle. Over the course of 3 weeks, the task force followed leads across 5 states. Most of them led to dead ends, burned phones, fake businesses, rented vans under temporary aliases. But one connection held. In every single neighborhood where the truck had parked, school access systems had seen subtle data spikes, unusual logins, cloned access badges, glitched security cams. These were not brute force hacks. These were inside system manipulations designed to appear like harmless IT malfunctions. Every point of entry matched a visit by a fake service vehicle, and each vehicle at some point shared the same core disguise strategy: familiar logo, community-based branding, unmonitored access point, smiling vendor with nothing to hide, until one bark changed all of it. The task force unofficially labeled the Operation Echo Unit, a suspected ring of system-level infiltrators who studied school infrastructure for later manipulation. Why? That part was still unclear. No ransom notes, no extortion attempts, no malware planted. Only data harvesting, surveillance, and access duplication. The working theory: these operators were laying the groundwork for a long-term breach, not just into one school but into district-wide command chains, and the test had been happening quietly for nearly a year, until Tango found it. It happened in Greensboro, North Carolina. A teacher on morning duty noticed a familiar truck parked across from the cafeteria entrance. It wasn't labeled as ice cream this time. It said Sunbelt Printer Maintenance, but she recognized the man. He had been in her neighborhood months before, offering discounts to parents at a back-to-school night. She made the call. By the time agents arrived, the truck was gone, but surveillance picked up the license plate. It had been registered in a different name, same as the one found burned into a spare key under the original ice cream truck's passenger seat. The system was still alive, but it had adapted. Now it was moving faster, smarter. Tango wasn't the only dog with instinct. At the Greenville K-9 unit, a second team had joined the rotation: Officer Cameron Price and his K-9, Ranger, a German Shepherd trained for explosive and tech detection work. When briefed on the Echo Unit patterns, Ranger's training was expanded. He began conducting sweeps on schools that reported previous van sightings, and within 2 days he found something. At Oakwood Elementary, behind a sealed maintenance vent in the nurse's office, Ranger alerted with force, sniffing and pawing until officers removed the panel. Inside, a custom-built transceiver linked to a battery that was still active. It had been broadcasting on a narrow signal band, undetectable by standard network scans. Its purpose: live keylogger. It had been collecting inputs from a desktop used to log student medications, health records, and pickup notes. If the device had stayed in place, its data could have fed directly into a mapping database, matching health info with parent schedules, addresses, and vulnerabilities. This wasn't random. It was precise, intentional, and it had almost worked. Brent Holloway, Tango's handler, was looped in again. He compared notes with Officer Price. The alerts from both dogs overlapped in a way that was impossible to ignore. Neither had been trained for detecting digital scent, but both had detected the same stress markers: trace chemical signatures from adhesives, synthetic coatings, and cooling systems not commonly used in school hardware. It wasn't about the device, it was about the human pattern behind the device. That's what the dogs were sensing, and that's what saved them all. Late one night, after reviewing logs from every known Echo Unit stop, agents located a drop zone behind a condemned building in Richmond. A truck had parked there for 12 minutes, 1 week after the Brandon Street incident. Inside a drain pipe, they found a sealed package, dropped in a rush, likely before extraction. Inside, 3 cloned staff badges, a portable router, a printed map of Brandon Street Elementary, a hand-drawn circle around the playground gate, and one line written in pen across the top of the paper: "Try again later. Wait for quiet." They had been preparing to return. When the federal findings were quietly presented to district security teams, Brandon Street Elementary became the first school in the region to install a permanent K-9 patrol rotation during all open hours. No announcement, no spectacle. But each morning, Tango arrived with Brent and sat near the front entrance, just watching. The staff no longer saw a dog. They saw a guard, a signal, a line that would not be crossed again. Brent never said much during briefings. He didn't posture, didn't take credit, but he kept one photo on his desk now. Tango sitting in front of the ice cream truck, just after the rear panel had been pried open. The light had caught the dog's eyes mid-glare, focused, dead on. The caption underneath, handwritten, read, "The moment it all cracked," because it had, and everything after that moment was just light pouring through the break. On the one-year anniversary of the Brandon Street interception, the school invited Tango and Brent for a quiet visit. No media, no fanfare, just a walk through the yard. A group of third graders stood by the fence whispering as Tango passed. One child stepped forward and asked if he could pet the dog. Brent looked down. Tango stood still, then gently stepped forward. The boy knelt. The dog leaned in, and for a moment, nothing needed to be said. They didn't know the full story. They didn't have to. They just knew the dog had stopped something big, and he had done it for them. No one ever found the top of the chain behind Echo Unit. The faces behind the van stayed hidden, but they never returned to Brandon Street or any other school where Tango had stood. Because sometimes one bark, one refusal to ignore a silent threat, is enough to shift the path of everything. The town didn't give him a medal, but he got something else. A name etched into the memory of a place that almost let something terrible slip through but didn't. Because a dog named Tango barked at a van and changed everything. Some vans pass unnoticed. This one almost did. If that bark gave you chills, imagine the ones we never hear about. Hit like, tap subscribe, and stick with us because the next story might hit even closer to home.